Good evening. We'll now call this special board meeting of the Methacton Board of School Directors to order. Please rise for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
No announcements for this evening. No executive session since the last time we were all together. By way of attendance, all board members are present except for Mr. Roth, who is ill. So we'll move on to scheduled speakers and presentations. Dr. Zerbe.
Mr. President, we have one scheduled speaker for this evening. That's me. I'd like the board to please take their seats in the first row.
Focus off of the wrinkles.
Good evening and welcome to this special meeting of the Methacton School District. It gives me great pleasure and honor to stand before you this evening to present to you the field improvement project for the Methacton School District. Today's special meeting is specifically designed to bring before the Board of Directors the approval of the bids for construction of the Methacton High School field project. This evening, I'm going to be covering several items. We're going to talk a little bit about the history of this project. We're going to talk about the project components and then the reasons for the project. Talk about funding, recommendations, and the next steps. The historical timeline goes something like this. For some of us, we're probably missing another 10, 15 years prior to this message. Is that right? All right, at least. But from most recent times, it goes back to an athletic feasibility study presented to the Board of Education back on October 21 of 2008. And this timeline does not include all the events that have led up to this evening, but kind of highlights the longevity of this process and the commitment that previous boards and this Board of School Directors have had for this project, and you, as members of our community, and supporters of this project, have had for a number of years. October 18, 2011, we saw the athletic director and coaches present the Methacton High School Athletic Fields Improvement Project to the board. And then on a subsequent Tuesday meeting, October 25, 2011, the board approves a field and light improvement project. November 22nd of 2011, the board approves Architera as its architect to design what happens to then be somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 to 15 different drawings until it reached a drawing of K, which undergoes between May 2013 and June 2013, drawing K undergoes modifications in order to meet regulatory, playability, and safety requirements as it was submitted and for approval for land development. On December 18th of 2013, Worcester Township Planning Commission recommends preliminary final approval for land development. Looking at a couple more dates in this historical timeline, you can see on January 7th of 2014, Architera and the administration present field project and get approval for solicitation of bids. Unfortunately, February 26th of 2014, the board approves the rebidding of the field project. If you recall, the first round of bids brought in no general contractors submitting bids for that proposal. In March 4 of 2014, the board approves a $5.5 million bond issue to pay for the field project. In May of 22nd of 2014, bids from the second round of bids were rejected. This board felt it economically prudent and responsible for us, even though it could have moved forward with awarding of contracts that evening, because we had so few general contracting bids, 2 to be exact, 1 electrical and no plumbing bids. They took it upon themselves to reevaluate the situation, directed the administration to organize an advisory committee, and we did just that in June of 2014, and then later in September of 2014, the board approved the 3rd round of bid solicitations. December 3rd of 2014, we had a bid opening where we received 5 general construction bids, 4 electrical bids, and 3 plumbing bids. Those bids were reviewed with the property committee, with me and the rest of the members of our property committee, and the property committee is positioned this evening to move that particular recommendation forward for the full board's approval. December 17th, 2014, Worcester Township Supervisors approved conditional use application, but with multiple conditions. And we'll talk about those conditions in a few minutes. Again, historical items. On December 18th, 2014, the board approves a solicitor to file an appeal. This is the day following the decision by Worcester Township for us to appeal their decision. On December 30th, 2014, a resident who had appeals with our bond issue had withdrawn his appeal. And that brings us here to today, January 12th of 2015. Well, I'll be making a recommendation to the board to approve construction bids to begin construction on or about March 2nd of 2015. Again, as I go through this presentation, I'm going to ask the public as well as the board to reserve their questions until the end so that we can go back to our microphones and discuss any issues that are relative to the proposal and presentation here this evening. Let's talk about the reasons for the project. All along, this project has been predicated on the need for safety of our athletes and our students, from our phys ed classes to our lacrosse teams, to our field hockey teams, to our soccer team, to our football team, and everyone else, including the band that marches in our parking lot. These fields and this project is predicated on safety, and that is our number one reason for this project. Playability, meaning that when the feasibility study was done in 2008, it told us that we were 11 fields short, meaning that we had a need, more need for the fields than we had the ability to play on fields. Also, this project is predicated on the safety for our neighbors and our surrounding area. We know that this campus suffers from significant water runoff during heavy storms. This project will help manage the water runoff that will help deter its impact currently to our neighbors. It'll be helpful for our neighbors and our surrounding area. In addition, we need to place this project so that the quality of our athletic complex are on par with our academic quality of a district. This district, in most recent times, was 13th, the high school was 13th in the Commonwealth for achievement. That says a significant amount. But in many of our conversations, specific conversations that we've had with people in the public, we probably are not as high. And I don't even want to guess at a number, but if we talk about a number in the Pac-10 related to athletic complexes, we're probably in the bottom. If we talk about bringing our community together, there's a gentleman that sits right here, Mr. Evans. For the last, I don't know how many years, sir, you've been here talking about Friday Night Football. There's no question that will help bring our community together. It will give a social outlet not only to our students, but to our community, to us as adults, and bring the residents of Worcester and Lower Providence together. like never before. And this project helps us maintain the quality of life in schools in our community. It sets a foundation for quality moving forward. When we talk about funding for this project, we know that early on, this was considered to be a project that, would be completely funded by taxpayer dollars. But as this project has progressed over the years, it is clearly been the directive of this board to make this a public-private partnership, and we've done just that. We borrowed $5.5 million. Of that $5 million, we are allocating $4 million to the construction of this project. And as you can see, as of today, for our $1.7 million goal in fundraising, we are at $1.2 million plus. And we're early in the process of raising funds. So with that, I just want to thank the fundraising capital campaign committee. Many of those members are here this evening. We have contributions from many within the community as well as from outside of our community. We know that these private funds and the capital campaign with a $1.7 million goal is designed to currently raise those funds both through in-kind, cash, and stock contributions. We have a multi-phase approach to fundraising. We've just begun the heavy work of phase one, which are contributions greater than $5,000. We're currently formulating the committee that now will look on the phase two contributions for contributions of $5,000 and less. We also know that we have an opportunity for giving for all that allows for one-time gifts as well as multi-year gifts. We also have the opportunity for corporations or individuals to get naming rights to goalposts, to scoreboards, to fields for their donations to this project. There really are opportunities for all to participate. When we look at the major improvements planned for this project, it's really based on the land development approval for the Plan K that we had put forward. And they really comprise of 5 major components. And those components include campus-wide stormwater management, renovations to our stadium field or a football field, renovations to our track, renovations to an auxiliary field, which can be used by all of our sports, including band and phys ed and other activities. And then the relocation of our existing softball fields, both JV and varsity softball fields, to a new location on our campus. So let's take a look at each one of these to determine what was in Plan K and what we're approving here this evening. If we look at the stadium field will be converted from grass to a synthetic turf. We're constructing one restroom building. That's where the plumbing contractor comes in predominantly for this project. Although there will be other water service to other parts of the campus where the fields will be constructed, the primary work will be in the construction of the restroom. We'll install electrical service to all non-field lighting areas, including the restroom, having electricity run out to the dugouts, to the bench areas, places where typically electricity is needed to put in mobile scoreboards or to put in mobile units to help with the management of the fields. We're going to install a sound reinforcement system for the stadium. We're looking at installing 5 poles with lighting at both 50-foot candles and 30-foot candles. The Plan K also talked about installing new stadium perimeter fencing and installing portable sleeve ball control netting and a scoreboard. I will bring it to the attention of the board and the public that the only item of significance that's off of this and that's not on the plan is for a press box to be constructed. And that's something that we certainly need to address, and we can certainly do that as we start moving forward with possibly other in-kind contributions from interested parties. If we move on to the next component, the track, we're looking at not only repairing but polyurethaning and repainting the track oval. We need to install a new track D area and runways, install a sand catcher system, sand pits with covers, install pole vault uprights, and shot put and javelin area. Significant construction for our awesome track and field program. In addition to the stadium field, the auxiliary field. We'll construct the auxiliary field to be a synthetic field surface, install electric service to non-field lighting areas, install field lighting, including 6 poles at 50-foot candles and 30-foot candles. Plan K also included installing ball control netting, installing new perimeter fence, and a scoreboard. The construction also requires the installation of 2 softball fields, 1 JV and 1 varsity field. We would construct those 2 fields, outfield fences, backstops, warning tracks, install 4 dugouts, 2 for each field, 1 for visitor and 1 for home on each field, install electrical service to those areas, construct a flagpole near the softball field and auxiliary field, install scoreboards for both fields, and then eventually, once the project comes close to its end, redo the parking lot and paving area that's been disturbed as part of the project. So if we take a look at this, we know that this is the stadium field right here. The D area is this particular area right in here. There's where the additional track areas will be. Here's where our shot put and javelin areas will go. Over in this area shows the major stormwater basin as part of the stormwater management part of the project. Likely construction will start in this area of the campus once approved and once a schedule is put together. If you notice over in this area, this is currently where the JV and varsity softball fields currently exist. We'll be moving the current grass soccer field from this area over to this area for the auxiliary field and placing the softball field in this location. And then there will be stormwater management throughout the campus. Likely going across the parking lot here with some piping is where the repaving of macadam will take place. This is a rendering of the stadium field. This is a rendering of the auxiliary field and the 2 softball fields. Many of these images have been seen before by the board as well as by the public. Recommendations, basically based on our December 3rd, 2014 bids received, and the December 16th review by the Property Committee, we're asking this evening that the board approve bids in the total of $4,918,000 in order to move this project forward with a planned construction start of March 2nd. If we look at the bids before us here this evening, well, you need to notice that we are recommending that we accept the base bid of Applied Landscaping Technologies of New Jersey, Incorporated, in the amount of $4,694,000. We need to also accept the deduct alternate bid, which is GC3, to eliminate the track work, which is a deduct of $250,000. We're also asking for the board to accept the deduct alternate bid of GC5 to eliminate backstops and all fencing, which is a deduct of $280,000. The resulting contractor sum for Applied Landscaping would then be $4,164,000. We would then also ask the board to accept the independent bid. And let me just explain that for a second. When we put this bid out for the 3rd time, we not only had both a base and an alternate bid for each of the primes, meaning a prime general construction bid, a prime electrical bid, and a prime plumbing bid, but we also had alternates. And in those alternates, there were items that were removed. So for example, in the electrical bid, which we'll show you here in just a minute, one of the alternates is to remove the field lighting, and we'll talk about that. But in this case, we also had what are called independent bids. Our bid committee went through the project and looked at 8 different areas that could be independently bid aside from the general contractor and aside from the other 2 primes. And in this, we had an independent bid from American Athletic Courts for all track work. They technically came in $1,000 less than what the general contractor had proposed in his base bid. So we are asking to eliminate the GC's track work, we're asking to eliminate the fencing, and we're asking to accept the independent bid for the amount of $249,000. So the recommendation will read as this. Will approve the general prime construction base bid by Applied Landscaping Technologies and accept the deduct alternate bid GC3 to eliminate track work and accept the deduct alternate bid GC5 to eliminate backstops and all fencing in an aggregate of $4,164,000. We then will ask the board to approve the independent construction bid by American Athletic Courts for $249,000. The note at the bottom is a note that is not only for the board, but also for the general public. During our time on this project, it became apparent in the general public that a concern related to infill. Infill is the small particles that go between the synthetic turf to help cushion the turf. That infill is typically made in its generic form out of crumb rubber, which is typically made out of recycled tires. In probably the last 6 to 10 months, there's been concern in the general public, news articles on the matter that claim that there might be some relationship between crumb rubber on synthetic fields and a link to cancer. That being the case, with the research that we've conducted and that we've had experts conduct, there is no direct scientific evidence to suggest that there is a linkage, but there's also no direct scientific evidence to suggest that there is not. So it's my recommendation this evening, and that's why it's noted here, that in a post-award scenario, we would do a change order under the base bid with Applied Landscape. This is not something they need to approve this evening, but it's something that we would say we need to do to take that crumb rubber out of the project, give us some time to go out and bid, acquire a donation, or get it off of the state contract, what's called an acceptable alternative to the crumb rubber, one that is not linked at all in the discussions relative to the potential of causing cancer. As you recall, this entire project is based on and is predicated on the matter of safety. And it is my recommendation this evening that we move forward with accepting of these two construction bids, knowing that we will be going with a change order deduct to remove the infill and to reduce that overall cost associated with the infill, as well as providing the proper alternative material. Let's go on to the next prime bid. It's the prime electrical bid. We are asking the board this evening to accept the base bid from Ronald Janey in the amount of $1,279,800. We're also asking the board to accept the alternate bid of EC2 to eliminate all field lighting related work in the amount of $842,000 for a total of $437,800 for the electrical bid. If we move on to the actual wording of this particular item, you can read that for yourself, but most importantly, we need to understand why I'm recommending the deduct here this evening. It's no secret that on December 16th of 2014, the administration met with the property committee and reviewed the bids as they came in. Those bids included the conversation about where we stood with respects to our conditional use, which was actually being decided the following evening. And at that time, we had all intent to make sure that our lighting was included in that process. But subsequently, as a result of the decision by the Worcester Township Supervisors, it is now are in our best interests, which provides us the most flexibility in moving forward with this project for the reality of Plan K, to not have the poles or the installation of the lighting take place until such time that the litigation or the appeal, which was approved by our board to move the solicitor to appeal this process, is concluded. And at such time where we can award the bid for the lights and the poles, we will do just that. We have the ability to move forward with the land development plan as we're talking about this evening, and we will include the running of conduit in the form of a change order or an in-kind contribution or some other donation that allows us to run the conduit for the lighting on the field, so that we have the least amount of disturbance if we're not able to put the lighting up during the typical construction phase. So what does this all mean? Not to confuse you, it's really designed to allow us the flexibility to address the lighting issues once the litigation has been concluded, without expending something that would entail us taking on all the additional conditions that were laid out by the decision by the Worcester Township supervisors. If we move on to the next item, there's a prime plumbing bid. This is pretty straightforward. We're asking the board to approve the amount of $67,400 as a result for Vision Mechanical Incorporated. And basically this is pretty straightforward. Majority of their work is in the restroom area, and then water service out to the fields. Also this evening, we have before the board, and we're so very appreciative of our relationship with the J.P. Mascaro & Sons organization, and we would like the board to accept the donation in the amount of $205,810 for the backstops and fencing from J.P. Mascaro & Sons. This will then include all of the components of Plan K with the exception of the lighting as it was originally established in Plan K. Timeline moving forward. This evening, I'm hopeful that the board awards the bids as presented. January of 2015, we will file an appeal with the Commonwealth Court with the decision on conditional use. From the 13th through the 31st, we'll organize a construction schedule and groundbreaking ceremonies. March 2nd is when construction is generally ready to begin. I know in our initial meetings with the general contractor, they may be interested in starting earlier. August 7th, substantial completion. That's when we're able to get on the fields and play. It may not mean where everything's in order, but the final punch list will be December 19th, 2015. And that ends my presentation for this evening. I'd like the members of the board to take their seats back at the table, and we'll open the floor to any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Zerbe. Certainly has been a long road. We appreciate your diligence, as long as the administration and the coaching staff in getting us to this point. Open the floor now for questions to Dr. Zerbe on the presentation. Any questions from board members? No? Go ahead.
So with the expenses that we have identified here tonight, and there was one other that I hadn't added in, which is the infill, we are in excess of the amount of money that we have committed, mentally I guess committed by the board of $4 million from the bond, plus the contributions that we anticipate of $1.7 million. And that being the case, where would those funds come from?
Well, Brenda, I'm not certain of your overall question, but I can tell you that this project has taken a long road. Certainly, when we're talking about the $4 million that we committed to this project, it was committed as a matter of we need $4 million to get this construction done. We were going to raise $1.7 million to offset the construction cost. Have there been other costs that are associated with the project from the very beginning, going back possibly to even 2008, maybe back into even 2011? Well, certainly. Those costs have either already been absorbed or will be absorbed either in the general operating budget or through some other means within the district's budget, either through a capital fund or through our fund balance. Moving forward, though, I really think it's prudent for the board to know that we've done a significant amount of homework on this matter, and you've been fiscally prudent through this whole process. In fact, I said earlier this evening that we had an opportunity back in March of 2014 to award this project, but it would have been at the cost of nearly $7 million, and it was just unfathomable. But there's significant need for us to get this project done for the safety of our students and for the impact it will have not only on our students but on our community. And I think that we as a fundraising entity with our commitment so far know that we need to raise more than the $1.7 million at this point, based on how all the numbers have come in. And I think our position on that is it needs to be reviewed with our fundraising committee, but I do think that we can not only meet that goal, but exceed the $1.7 million. So to answer your question, those funds will either come from fundraising or will come from other mechanisms within our operating budget.
So less a question than a comment. To Dr. Zerby's point, I've been really impressed with the work of the capital campaign and how the community and to the point before, folks outside the community have stepped up and committed to this project. And I'm certain that we'll be able to vastly exceed the $1.7 million goal that has been set previously. Additional questions?
If I may,
Mr. McFarland?
a clarification question. On the lighting, and we're familiar with the issue with regard to the appeal, so you've removed the $842,000 from the bid that was reflective of the lighting. And my question on that is, was that bid made based on the lower level of lighting or the desired 50 level?
All the bids received for electrical were based on the desired level of lighting, meaning 85-foot poles with 50, 30-foot candles.
Thank you.
Additional questions?
The only thing I was just going to mention is, could we make the full motion so we can make questions or comments to the motion, and then open it up to public for comment, and then we can take our vote?
Well, since we have to do public comment first, let's just get through this and then we'll power through that. Mrs. Barone, you had a comment?
Yes, the only question I had was, or one of the questions I had was that you brought up for the first time that we're going to do an alternate to the infill. Can you give us an idea what that is and what the cost differential is going to be for that?
Certainly. When we became aware of the potential link or the public link between infill and the concern for its connection to cancer, we did what was called an addendum to the bid process and asked for the vendors to also provide us an alternative infill product that's not tied to this particular issue. We did receive the lowest bid on this infill was approximately $170,000. And that amount of money, although it was an alternate in this process, it's felt that we can acquire that commodity at a much lesser rate than what was being offered by the lowest acceptable bid underneath the bids. So that's why we're asking that we not only accept the base bid from the general contractor, but then we will follow that up with an add deduct of the crumb rubber, and then use the resources from that to help purchase the alternative product.
And what is the alternative product?
There are several different kinds. There is rubber that's coated. There are natural products such as coconut husk, and it ranges from all different aspects. Each of them come with their different utility, as well as life expectancy, as well as maintenance needs. And I think it's prudent that we don't settle on a particular infill at this moment in time, and allow our consultants, as well as some other research done, to make sure that we provide the best information back to the board on what that infill should really be. But this evening, I'm just telling you so that you have the information necessary, that we're not going to be putting down, or it's my recommendation that we do not put down the crumb rubber as it exists in the base bid, and that we will be deducting that out in order to get an alternative that is not associated in any shape or form with causing unsafe conditions.
Thank you. Ms. Woodring?
Yeah, excuse me, I think I have just two questions. One is a matter of clarification, and I'm referring to the generous offer of the Mascaro and Sons Corporation to finance our backstops and fencing. Is that the fencing for the fields, or is that the fencing that was mentioned in the Worcester Township piece of conditions?
That's a very good question. That only includes backstops and fencing around the Plan K construction for this project. It does not include any or associated with any of the conditions posed by the decision by Worcester Township. Though your point taken, there is significant amount of fencing if we accept that ruling to put forward.
And that's part of the appeal.
That is part of the appeal, absolutely. Thank you for bringing that to my attention.
What would we have any idea what that fencing would cost us that Worcester decided to say we had to do under conditional use? Do we have like an approximate amount?
Early estimates were anywhere between $300,000 to $325,000.
So the township essentially added another $300,000 to the project by that. Okay.
Wait, that's not. My second question had to do with our prior money regarding our capital improvements. And when I thought we had decided on that $5.5 million bond, $4 million toward the field, $1.5 million toward our other capital needs, does this, if we approve this, does that then cause us to go back and reassess our other capital needs in the district?
It is the intent that if we approve this here this evening, we know that our obligation on this matter is $4 million of the $5.5 million bond. We've already raised 1.2. I believe the total obligation as part of this here is 4.9, and so that it does not include the lighting, however, and it does not include the change in the infill. So in order to more accurately reflect your question, what will happen is we will need to assess where we're going to land on this project. Like with any construction project, you have a budget, you have you have an intent where you want to land on this thing. We did talk about the way we're structuring the giving for the fundraising, that people can donate not only with one-time gifts, but gifts over a 5-year period. So what will have to happen is we'll end up using a portion of the 5.5 in excess of the $4 million initially to fund this project. but as time goes on, as the resources come in, we pay ourselves back as a result, and then try to land where the board has agreed to land with the $4 million as being the total lump sum of expense, and that we are looking to fundraise the remaining portion of that.
Mr. Pellicano?
Just building on the comment about the fencing in Worcester Township, there were other requirements that were levied on us with respect to that conditional use. I believe there was landscaping, I'm not sure if there was the berm or something along those. So the $300,000 is just related to the fencing. Do we have an overall estimate as to what these additional requirements might be overall if these things get approved?
Frank, would you mind giving the board and the public an update on what those conditions are?
Yeah, actually, I don't have a copy of the decision with me tonight. There were 16 conditions. I mean, effectively, what the township did was approve the lighting. And what we had actually asked for was 85-foot light standards, and also an illumination level of 50-foot candles for football games and lacrosse games at practice, and 30-foot candles for all other activities. They say initially that they approved our application, but then there are 16 conditions that are attached. Some of those conditions, for example, are that you really don't get to play at 50 and 30 on the auxiliary field. Rather, you play at 30 and 20 on the auxiliary field. It's interesting, and someone will have to explain, I guess, when we get to the court. One of the things that we object to is the idea that the ordinance itself requires that we play at the lowest level of safe illumination. Their decision effectively decides that the lowest safe level of illumination is 50-foot candles for football games, 50-foot candles for lacrosse games, and 30-foot candles for everything else on the stadium. But at the immediately adjoining field, they believe that for some reason the safe level of illumination is less than that. Now, I read a press statement that they put out, which essentially says, well, then you can't play the lacrosse games at the auxiliary stadium or at the auxiliary field. That's a major impact to the school district. So what they give in the title, they take with respect to the others. For example, we went through the land development process and secured a land development approval some months ago. One of the conditions is that we add berming to the project. They used testimony from a landscaper and a gentleman that had been qualified with respect to sound and noise levels to attempt to impose a condition having to do with light reflection. That'll be interesting in the discussion with regard to that. But as a consequence of that, they say that not only do we have to do additional berming, but it has to be approved in a new land development process to be filed with the township. So when you make your way through all of those various conditions, it in some respects makes the project completely unwieldy. I don't know that I'll suggest that that may be the reason for the conditions, but many of the conditions are not appropriate for what we're attempting to do. What that berming would cost, what that land development process would cost, how much additional that would be in terms of berming. There's one item in there with respect to a $30,000 escrow for trees to be placed on the property. That's over and above what we agreed to do through the land development process. There are a whole lot of things in there when you go through the 16 different conditions. There's an awful lot of things in there that we think are inappropriate, but it would be, as you point out, we got to the number of several $100,000. We thought the appeal was necessary.
And is it true that during the conditional use hearings that they basically accepted the testimony of our expert with respect to the safe lighting, and then yet they rendered a decision that was something contrary to that?
Well, I think this, we brought an expert in from Penn State, and the expert from Penn State, who was a teacher there, testified that the safe levels of lighting for football games and for lacrosse games and lacrosse practices was 50-foot candles of illumination. His testimony, I believe, and I'm paraphrasing, is that he wouldn't let his children play if the level of illumination was less than that. We did then have an expert that we had to in part pay for that was brought in by the township, intended to be an independent lighting consultant. She had written one report with levels of illumination that were not acceptable to us. She revised her report to up those levels of illumination. And the night that I had the opportunity of cross-examining that expert, who I thought was a truthful expert, her testimony was that while it would be the case that you may be able to play either football or lacrosse at 30-foot candles of illumination, that you would actually have to do a design to see whether that level of illumination could be made uniform. And if it could not, if the design could not be a uniform lighting design, then you would have to raise the levels to 50-foot candles and 30-foot candles, as was the nature of our application. It was also pointed out to that expert that she had only, and she acknowledged this, that she had only been involved in one stadium design project where she sat as a member of a planning commission to approve a design project, and that the design project was a Musco design that had been testified to by Bob Zoller, who was our expert before the board in Worcester. And her testimony was that after his testimony, according to the same standard in a New Jersey field application for the same type of fields, for the exact same lighting system, that she determined that the safe level of play, the minimum safe level of play, was 50-30 as the field. That was the independent lighting consultant that was hired by the township. Again, I don't know why the lighting level would have to be different on the auxiliary field than on the other field. But her testimony was such that she effectively agreed with us with respect to the level of illumination. So the decision was somewhat different, considerably different as it applied to safe lighting levels, and we thought that was improper.
Thank you. If there's no other questions, go ahead. Ms. Shackelford?
Dr. Zerbe, you and I had a talk this afternoon about the materials or the chemicals that would be used. Could you just fill the board in on that? Because I think they might be interested in that.
I think to a greater extent we talked about how will the fields be maintained once construction occurs, and how much might that cost us. It's been from the review of our architect that our yearly maintenance cost on synthetic turf and on this high school campus will go down. However, what we also need to keep in mind is it doesn't necessarily constitute a savings. It'll be my recommendation and a business manager's recommendation to take that savings from these new fields and put that savings into an escrow, which will allow us to build so that 11, 12, 13 years from now, if anything needs to be replaced, we have a fund to draw from to get those things replaced. So even though it may appear to be a savings, we would take whatever that savings amount is and move it forward into an escrow account for the long term.
Thank you. Any other? Ms. Hackett?
The resolution is on the agenda for the 3 bids. Do we have the details of exactly what's included in the general construction? Is there a list of the items that are included? the specific categories like restrooms, track, so that we have a basis for exactly what we're expecting?
Yes. So Brenda, I think as part of my presentation this evening, I went through the major components associated with each of the parts of the construction. So let me just pull out my sheet here, and I can certainly tell you what each one of those are.
Well, it could be part of the resolution, is really my point.
When we make the motion, we can word it such that it covers those components in
Thank you.
in Dr. Zerba's presentation.
Okay.
Any other comments? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to public comment on board action items. Is there any public comment on board action items? Very well, seeing none, we'll move on to voting items. First item, number 7, volunteers. We have a list of volunteers for board approval. They've been distributed to the board, about 15 of them. So I'll ask for a motion to approve the attached list of volunteers who have completed the requirements in compliance with board policy number 916. Is there a motion? Ms. Woodring, is there a second? Mr. McFarland, any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Mr. Pelican is abstaining because his son is one of the volunteers. We're happy to have him. So motion passes 7-0 with 1 abstention. Moving on to the reason everyone's here. Item number 8, the Methacton High School Athletic Field Project Bid Awards. So I'm going to take all 3 of these at once. So I'll ask for a motion to approve item 8.1, general construction, the prime bid, construction base bid by Applied Landscape Technologies, accepting the deduct alternate bid GC3 to eliminate track work, and accept the deduct alternate bid GC5 to eliminate backstops and all fencing, an aggregate amount of $4,164,000. And also approve the independent construction bid by American Athletic Courts for all track work for a total of $249,000. And let the motion state all the different components that were presented in your presentation for the record.
And for the record, all these bids have specific components outlined in them, so they can be referenced at a later date if need be.
Great. Moving on to 8.2, approving the electrical prime construction base bid by Ronald Janney Incorporated and accept the deduct alternate bid EC2 from Ronald Janney Inc. to eliminate all field lighting related work in the aggregate amount of $437,800. And item 8.3, approve the plumbing prime construction base bid of Vision Mechanical Inc. in the amount of $67,400. So I'm asking for a motion to approve all of that. Mr. Phillips, is there a second? Mr. Pelicano, any discussion?
Just a quick,
McFarland?
if I may. Because the bidders themselves have not really been described in any detail in terms of who they are, in my own brief background check, I just wanted to comment that I looked at each of these and they have extensive experience in this area, or these areas that they intend to do construction. So I just wanted to make that point because it wasn't mentioned, but they are, from what they appear to be in terms of available on the internet, very well qualified to take on projects at this time.
You're absolutely right, Mr. Farland. I failed to mention that to the board, but essentially all of the bidders that you have before you this evening were interviewed by our committee and substantiated not only their experience but also their intent of what they provided in the bid and are prepared to move forward as the dollar amount states and as the work is stated in their bid. So they do come with extensive experience, all of them, and 2 of the contractors have worked on similar project as subs in the past.
Great point. Any other comment? Ms. Woodring?
Yeah, I guess I just thought of something. Going back to your notation about the crumb rubber and about an allowance for a potential change order at a later time, will each change order then come before the board separately for our approval?
Good question. We had planned to have a property committee meeting this morning, but due to the weather, The committee has been, meeting has been convened to Tuesday at 7:30, January 20th. On that agenda were several items, one being change order process. It is the recommendation of the administration that change orders of $10,000 and less get the approval of the administration. Anything over $10,000 would come before the board, but all change orders would go before the property committee. That hasn't been decided yet, but that is an agenda item. I'm certain that the property committee on the 20th will make a recommendation moving forward, if not for the evening of the 20th, but for a future board meeting and their consideration.
Thank you. Any additional comments? Okay. Hearing none, it gives me great pleasure to ask for a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? 8-0. The bids have been accepted. We have a project to move forward. So certainly, as I said before, a very long road and still much work to do, but would be remiss if we didn't, on behalf of the board, if I didn't thank everyone that's been involved from the community, the administration, council, of course the capital campaign committee, just everyone, the entire community that's really pulled together, parents, students, everyone gotten behind this project and is we're that much closer to making it a reality. So thank you all, and we look forward to the new field. Moving on to, did you want to say something?
I do. I just want to thank each board member here this evening for their commitment to this process. I know it's been tough, and I just want to say thank you. Where it's going to be a major impact is when you get the thank yous from the students that get to play on these fields. So I look forward to the groundbreaking ceremony and getting you involved in that process. Thank you.
And we'll give you all a raise. Moving on to item number 9, gifts and donations. I'd like to accept a motion to accept the donation in the amount of $205,810 from J.P. Mascaro and Sons for backstops and fencing for the Methacton High School Athletic Field Project. Is there a motion? Mrs. Shackelford, is there a second? Mrs. Barone, please take your hand down. Just leave it up. Any discussion? I would just like to say again, what a tremendous gift from the Mascaro company and the Mascaro family. Just done a phenomenal amount for this district and continue to do so for this district and the community, and we're very much indebted to them and very grateful to them. If there's no other comments, I'll ask for, there's a motion and a second, I'll ask for a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? 8-0. Which brings us to courtesy of the floor.
If I could just do one thing. I just want to pay recognition. Pat Mascaro Jr. is in the audience with us this evening, and we just want to say thank you on behalf of all the students, families of the Methacton community for your generosity in this process. Thank you.
Here, here. Please.
Could I ask, and maybe this is also on the property committee agenda, but when construction begins on March 2nd, will there be a schedule to accommodate all the things that are otherwise displaced through the construction process?
So the current activities that would be on the
Right,
streets.
track,
Yeah.
graduation, all that stuff.
Mrs. Woodring, we've been working on that months ago. Probably back in December, I directed Mr. Spiewak to start looking at opportunities in the community, not only within our immediate area, but also with local colleges and universities that might be able to accommodate our needs. I can't tell you at this moment in time that we have everything nailed down, but I can tell you that just like in the instance with our most recent displacement of our women's field hockey program, we will take care of business and make sure that our students, even though they might not be on the Methacton fields for the entire spring season, we'll make sure that they're properly cared for and have the opportunity to compete at a level that they're used to. but just won't be on this campus. But we are in the process of taking care of that. And honestly, this vote this evening just perpetuates that movement going forward. So, Mr. Spiewak, we have a lot of work to do together, okay?
Absolutely. Okay, moving on to courtesy of the floor. Is there any of the public that wishes to be here for courtesy of the floor? Mr. Evans.
Ron Evans, Worcester Township. I just want to thank the board for finally getting this thing off the ground and started. And I hope everything goes all right and we can get started pretty quick. I do hope that it doesn't, it took us 20 years to get this far. I hope it doesn't take us 20 years for me to pull that light, but I guarantee you one thing, if it takes 20 years, I'll be there. I'll be 80 years old next month, and I'll be there if I need a wheelchair.
Well, the wheelchair is on you, but we'll make sure it happens in less than 20 years. Anyone else for courtesy of the floor? No? All right. Seeing none, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn. Mr. McFarland, second. Mr. Pelicano, all those in favor? Opposed? We stand adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone.